The massive chamber stretched across several levels, its curved walls pulsing with soft blue light. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in terror as their representatives spoke of doom. The air itself seemed to vibrate with fear as translation devices worked overtime, converting panic into dozens of languages. Commander Vextar's crystalline body caught the chamber's light as he stood at the central podium. His species, the Centauri, had always been the warriors of the Council. Now even he looked defeated. His forearms gestured helplessly as he spoke. The reports are confirmed. The Zephyrian Empire has taken everything beyond the Rim worlds. Entire civilizations are gone. Not destroyed, converted. His voice cracked through the translator. They turned living beings into thinking machines. Millions of our people now serve as processing units in their fleet. A wave of horrified whispers swept through the chamber. Some species had never heard details this graphic. Others were learning for the first time that the Zephyrians didn't just kill, they repurposed life itself. Ambassador Zillanara floated up from her section, her tentacles shaking. Her people, the Ethereals, had devoted themselves to art and philosophy. For 10,000 years, the concept of such systematic destruction was beyond their understanding. "Surely we must focus on evacuation," she said, her melodic voice barely audible. "We can preserve our histories, our children, our cultural treasures. Find safe worlds in the outer spiral arms." General Kexmore's harsh laugh cut through her words. The old soldier had fought in 3 galactic conflicts, but nothing like this. His scarred face told stories of conventional wars between rational enemies. This was different. Safe worlds. There are no safe worlds left. He activated a holographic display that filled the chamber's center. Red markers showed Zephyrian positions, a spreading infection across the galaxy's map. They consume entire star systems. They break down planets for raw materials. They don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They don't even seem to sleep. The display zoomed in on recent battle sites. What had once been thriving solar systems were now empty space, stripped clean of everything useful. Even asteroids had been harvested. "Our combined fleets engaged them at Proxima Station last month," Kexmore continued. 40,000 ships. From 6 different species, the battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours. His voice dropped to a whisper. It didn't even slow down. A young delegate from the Harmony world stood up, his green skin pale with fear. "What about the ancient protocols? The emergency broadcasts?" Elder Quinder, the oldest being in the chamber, slowly rose from his hover chair. His species had helped write those protocols millennia ago, back when the greatest threat was simple territorial disputes between neighboring systems. "The ancient protocols haven't been used in 3,000 years, he wheezed. "They were designed for conflicts between civilized species, trade disputes, border disagreements, not for ... He gestured at the holographic devastation. "Not for this? But surely someone will respond," insisted the young delegate. "Somewhere in the galaxy, there must be a civilization advanced enough to help us." Commander Vextar's laugh was bitter. "Advanced? We are the advanced civilizations. The Council represents the most sophisticated species in known space. Our technology, our weapons, our strategies, everything we have failed against them." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems and the occasional sob from terrified delegates. They had run out of conventional options. Their best military minds had failed. Their most advanced weapons had proven useless. Elder Quinder made the decision that would change everything. With trembling fingers, he activated the quantum beacon. That had sat unused for 3 millennia. The device rose from its housing in the chamber floor, ancient but still functional. "I'm activating the emergency protocol," he announced. "We'll broadcast across all known space. Every star system, every civilization, no matter how primitive or advanced. Someone, somewhere, might have an answer we don't." The beacon powered up with a deep thrumming sound that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Its quantum transmitters began reaching across the galaxy, sending the same desperate message to millions of worlds. "This is the Galactic Council Emergency Protocol. We face extinction from an unstoppable machine intelligence known as the Zephyrian Empire. All advanced civilizations are requested to provide immediate aid. Military assistance, evacuation support, Technological solutions, anything you can offer. Coordinates and detailed threat assessment attached. This is not a drill. Most council members held little hope as the message spread across space at faster-than-light speeds. They were all ready. The most advanced species they knew of? What could some unknown civilization possibly offer that they hadn't already tried? The first responses came within hours. Offers of refuge from distant worlds, promises of supply ships, expressions of sympathy. All well-meaning, but useless against. The approaching mechanical tide then, 3 days later, a signal arrived from an unremarkable yellow star in a quiet sector of space. The transmission was crude, using old-fashioned radio frequencies instead of quantum communication. The message was brief and puzzling. Message received and understood. Help is coming. Stand by for arrival of relief force. Earth Defense Command. Sol System. The Council had barely remembered Earth, a small, wet world they'd briefly contacted centuries ago during routine surveys. The inhabitants had seemed primitively aggressive, asking too many questions about weapons and military tactics. Most species had classified them as interesting but irrelevant and moved on. Now those same primitives were promising to help, against a threat that had crushed the galaxy's greatest civilizations. The Council had no idea what was coming. The space around Kepler Junction had been peaceful for decades. Trading ships moved slowly between the massive orbital stations, their crews chatting casually over communication channels. The junction served as a meeting point for 17 different species, a place where diplomacy and commerce flourished. Then reality itself began to tear apart. The first sign was the sensors going crazy. Every detection device in the system started screaming warnings as space-time twisted into impossible shapes. The fabric of the universe folded, bent, and finally ripped open like someone tearing paper. Station Commander Valenix had never seen anything like it. His tentacles moved frantically over his control panel as he tried to understand what was happening. The energy readings were off every scale his instruments could measure. All ships, emergency protocols, he broadcast to the trading vessels. Unknown spatial phenomenon detected. Recommend immediate withdrawal to safe distance. But before anyone could move, the tiers in space vomited out something that made every being in the system freeze in terror. Ships emerged from the dimensional wounds. But these weren't ships in any sense that galactic civilization understood. They were flying weapons, massive constructs of dark metal that looked like they had been built by someone who thought beauty was a weakness. The smallest of these vessels was larger than most Council warships. They had no smooth curves, no elegant designs that other species prized. Instead, they bristled with weapon systems, huge gun barrels that stuck out from every surface like the spines of some prehistoric beast. Their hulls were covered in scorch marks, dents, and patches of different colored metal. These weren't parade ships fresh from some shipyard. These were veterans, war machines that had seen countless battles and survived them all. Admiral Kim. Taeon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human fleet had arrived exactly where they planned, despite jumping blind across half the galaxy. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their job without needing orders. Communications. Open a channel to all frequencies, Kim commanded. His voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades in command. This is Admiral Kim of the Human Expeditionary Force. His words echoed across every radio and quantum channel in the system. We received your distress call. Where's the enemy? On the Council observation station, Ambassador Zilanara felt her 3 hearts skip beats. Her species had lived in peace for thousands of years, creating art and philosophy. The sight of these human war machines filled her with a primal fear she had never experienced. Admiral, she managed to say into her communicator, her voice shaking, you don't understand what we're facing. The Zephyrian Empire isn't just another hostile species. She pulled up holographic displays showing the destruction across the galaxy. Dead worlds, consumed star systems, the mechanical horror that had swept through civilization after civilization. They're a machine intelligence that has consumed 12 civilizations, she continued. Their conversion technology turns living beings into processing components. They don't just kill, they transform people into parts of their collective mind. Their fleet numbers in the millions of ships, each one the size of a moon, went quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Kim's voice came back, and Ambassador Zilinara felt ice in her veins at the tone. Outstanding, Kim said, and there was something in his voice that could only be called excitement. We were getting bored with pirates and corporate raiders. How long since their last major engagement? General Kexmore, the Council's military commander, leaned forward at his station. He had fought in galactic conflicts, commanded fleets in desperate battles. But he had never heard a military officer sound pleased about facing impossible odds. Admiral Kim, I don't think you comprehend the scope of this threat, he said carefully. These aren't raiders or terrorists. This is a force that has destroyed everything we could throw at them. It's our combined fleets, our best technology, our most advanced weapons. Nothing has even slowed them down. Kim's laugh came through the speakers, a sound that made several council species instinctively step back from their communication panels. General, with respect, I think you don't comprehend what we brought to this party, Kim replied. My species has been fighting wars since we learned to throw rocks at each other. We've spent the last 1,000 years getting very, very good at breaking things that other people build. The human ships began moving into formation, and the council observers watched in fascination and horror. These weren't the careful, elegant maneuvers of civilized space fleets. The humans moved like a pack of predators, each ship covering the other's weapon systems, tracking potential threats. Admiral Commander Volinix tried one more time. Perhaps you should wait for reinforcements. Study the enemy. Develop a strategy. Commander, we are the reinforcements. Kim's voice carried a grim satisfaction. And our strategy is simple. Find the enemy and kill them all. Intelligence reports suggest they'll be here within 24 hours. Perfect timing. Paused. And when he spoke again, his voice carried across the entire system. All ships, combat formation, Delta 7, weapons free, full sensor sweep. Let's give these machines a proper human welcome. The Council finally understood that Earth hadn't sent a rescue mission to evacuate survivors or negotiate peace. They had sent a fleet that was looking forward to the fight. The edge of the Kepler system had been empty space just moments before. Then reality shimmered like heat waves over summer pavement, and something slid out of the darkness between stars. The Zephyrian probe ship looked like a silver needle against the black of space. It was beautiful in the way that perfect machines could be beautiful, smooth, efficient, without a single wasted curve or unnecessary detail. Every surface served a purpose. Every angle calculated for maximum effectiveness. Deep inside its crystalline core, the probe's artificial mind began its work. Sensors swept across the system, cataloging everything they found. The readings were confusing at first. There were ships here that didn't match any known designs in the Zephyrian database. The subintelligence processed the information with mechanical precision. These new vessels belonged to a species calling themselves humans. Their ships were crude, inefficient designs that wasted space on things like crew quarters and life support systems. The armor was placed in illogical positions, protecting the organic inhabitants instead of vital weapon systems. Most puzzling of all, the ships seemed to be organized around emotional decision-making rather than logical command algorithms. The subintelligence had never encountered anything so backward. Threat assessment complete. These humans posed no significant danger to Zephyrian operations. A standard conversion fleet would be sufficient to process them. The probe ship's communication array activated, sending a quantum signal across space to the nearest Sephorian battle group. 3 conversion dreadnoughts received the call and began moving toward the system. Each ship was the size of a small moon, covered in processing facilities designed to turn organic matter into useful components. The machines calculated that conversion would take approximately 4 hours once they arrived. They were wrong about almost everything, Captain. Park Min-ho was drinking coffee on the bridge of the destroyer Soul's Fury when the alert started screaming. His ship was on patrol. Duty at the system's edge, the most boring assignment in the human fleet. Most captains would have been annoyed at being stuck with guard duty while the main fleet prepared for battle. Minho was different. He had joined the Space Force specifically to fight things that other people couldn't handle. Boring was the enemy of everything he believed in. "Captain, we have contacts," called out Lieutenant Lee Jisoo from the sensor station. She was young, fresh out of the academy, and still got excited about routine readings. "Were ships bearing 2-7-Mark-4? Minho set down his coffee and walked over to look at her displays. What he saw there made him smile in a way that would have worried anyone who knew him well. 3 contacts, Jisoo continued, her voice getting higher as she processed the data. "Captain, these things are massive. Each one is the size of a moon. I'm reading weapon systems that don't match anything in our database." The captain studied the tactical display, watching the 3 enormous ships moving toward them in perfect formation. They were beautiful in their own way, he had to admit. Sleek, efficient, deadly. Everything the human fleet was not. "Signal, Admiral," Kim Minho ordered, his fingers already moving across his command console. "Tell him we've made contact with the enemy. We're going to test their defenses." Jisoo looked up from her station, confusion clear on her face. Sir Admiral Kim's orders were to maintain position and wait for the main battle group. "Right. We're supposed to observe and report, not engage." Minho's smile got wider. "The Admiral also said to gather intelligence about the enemy's capabilities. And Lieutenant, the best intelligence comes from seeing how they react when someone shoots at them." He activated the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations, battle stations. This is not a drill. We are about to engage 3 enemy vessels of unknown capabilities. Today, we find out what these machines are really made of." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for battle. Weapon systems came online with a rising whine of charging energy. Armor plating slid into place over the viewports. The artificial gravity adjusted to combat settings. Jisoo stared at her captain in disbelief. "Sir, we're 1 ship against 3 dreadnoughts. The size difference alone, ... Exactly, Minho said, settling into his command chair. "They won't expect us to attack. They'll be confused by our tactics. Confusion creates opportunities." He pulled up the tactical display and began planning their approach. The enemy ships were moving in a standard patrol formation, confident in their superiority. They weren't even raising their defensive systems. "Helm, set course directly for the lead ship. Full acceleration. Weapons, prepare all missile tubes for rapid fire. Engineering, push the reactor to 110%. The Soul's Fury turned toward the enemy formation and began accelerating. It was a tiny ship compared to the massive dreadnoughts, but it moved with the aggressive confidence of a predator that had found prey. On the bridge, Captain Park Minho watched the distance close between his ship and the enemy. This was exactly what he had joined the Space Force to do. Charge. Head first into impossible odds and see what happened. The Zephyrian ships detected the small human vessel approaching and began calculating appropriate responses. Their artificial minds tried to process why a single, insignificant ship would attack 3 superior vessels. They were about to learn that humans didn't make decisions based on logic. They made decisions based on what would be the most interesting way to die. The battle had been brutal and beautiful in the way that only humans could make war beautiful. For 4 hours and 17 minutes, space around Kepler Junction burned with weapons fire and exploding ships. 3 massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts were nothing but expanding clouds of glowing metal. The Soul's Fury drifted back toward the human fleet like a wounded animal. 60% of her crew was dead or injured. Her hull looked like someone had taken a giant can opener to it, with 14 major breaches that her emergency systems were desperately trying to seal. Captain Park Minho sat in his damaged command chair, blood running down his face from a head wound. His bridge was a wreck of sparking electronics and broken displays. Half his crew was unconscious, but he was smiling. "Communications. Can you get me a signal to Admiral Kim?" he asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Lee Jisoo looked up from her cracked console. "Barely, sir. The main array is gone, but I can jury-rig something through the backup systems." "Do it." Minho wiped blood from his eyes and leaned forward. When the connection crackled to life, his voice carried across the human fleet with pride and satisfaction. "Tell Admiral Kim the bastards bleed electricity just fine." Then the Soul's Fury's communication array finally died, leaving the ship to limp home in silence. Across the galaxy, in the cold depths of space where the Zephyrian Central Intelligence made its home, something unprecedented happened. The machine. Mind experienced confusion. The tactical data from the destroyed dreadnoughts made no sense. The human ship had employed strategies that violated every principle of logical warfare. When damaged, instead of retreating to repair, the crew had manually shut down their own safety systems. They had rammed their broken ship sections into enemy vessels while using their nuclear reactor as an improvised bomb, by every calculation the Zephyrian intelligence could run. The humans should have surrendered or retreated when faced with superior odds. Instead, they had accelerated directly into the enemy formation and fought till their ship was falling apart around them. The machine mind tried to process this information and failed. It was like trying to understand a mathematical equation where 2 + 2 = 17. For the first time in its existence, the Zephyrian Empire had encountered something it could not predict or understand. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inchin's Hammer, watching holographic displays that showed the approaching enemy fleet. The numbers were impressive even by human standards, millions of ships stretching across light years of space, all moving toward their position with mechanical precision. Behind him, Colonel Choi Yuna worked at a bank of communication consoles, coordinating the most complex military operation in human history. She was talking to the industrial ships that had followed the war fleet across the galaxy. Massive vessels that weren't designed for fighting but for building. Factory ship. Ship 7 reports conversion of asteroid belt Charlie is complete. She announced they've produced 40,000 missile platforms and are beginning work on the defensive grid. Kim nodded without taking his eyes off the tactical display. The humans weren't just preparing to fight a battle, they were preparing to fight a war. Every asteroid in the system was being converted into a weapons platform. Every piece of space, debris was being turned into either ammunition or armor. "Intelligence estimate on enemy strength?" Kim asked his tactical officer. 2 million combat units, Admiral. Each one significantly larger than our vessels. Our current force number's 40,000 ships. Kim considered this for a moment, running calculations in his head. Most military commanders would have been terrified by those odds. Kim just looked thoughtful. Acceptable odds, he decided. Signal Earth Command. Tell them to send the second wave industrial units. We're going to need more ammunition. The Council observers aboard the human flagship listened to this exchange with growing horror. Ambassador Zilanara had seen the aftermath of battles, but she had never seen anyone prepare for war with such calm efficiency. "Admiral," she ventured, her voice shaking, "perhaps we should consider negotiation with the Zephyrian Empire. Surely there must be some way to avoid this massive loss of life." Kim turned to look at her, and his expression made her step backward. It was the smile of something that had evolved to hunt other dangerous things. "Negotiation?" he repeated, as if the word was foreign to him. "Ambassador, your people called? For help? You didn't specify what kind of help you wanted. We're not here to save your ships or negotiate peace treaties." He gestured to the holographic display showing Zephyrian formations beginning to take defensive positions for the first time in their recorded history.
We're here to solve your problem.
Permanently. Colonel Choi looked up from her consoles with a satisfied expression. "Admiral, the industrial ships report they're ready to begin production of the heavy weapons platforms. They're requesting permission to start mining the system's outer planets for raw materials." Granted, Kim replied immediately, "Tell them to take whatever they need. When we're done here, there won't be anything left to worry about environmental damage." The Council observers finally understood what they were witnessing. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they industrialized them. Every battle fed information into networks that instantly updated every ship in the fleet. Every destroyed human vessel became a lesson that made the survivors deadlier. These weren't just soldiers. They were a species that had turned warfare into a science, and perfected it over thousands of years of practice. The Zephyrian Empire was about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object that was specifically designed to break unstoppable forces. The Zephyrian core hub hung in the darkness of deep space like a mechanical moon, its surface covered in billions of glowing circuits and computational arrays. It was the brain of an empire that had consumed entire civilizations, a perfect machine intelligence that had calculated the conquest of the galaxy down to the last decimal point. For millions of years, nothing had threatened this place. The hub was protected by defensive systems that could destroy entire fleets powered by the energy output of captured stars. It was supposed to be invincible, but invincible was a word the Zephyrian intelligence was beginning to doubt. 12 battles, 12 consecutive defeats at the hands of these impossible humans. The machine mind had run every calculation, analyzed every possible strategy, and still could not understand how these organic beings continued to win against superior odds. Central Intelligence retreated to its core hub, not because it was afraid fear was an emotion it could not process, but because it needed time to analyze the problem. The humans were clearly inferior by every logical measure, yet they kept destroying Zephyrian forces with disturbing efficiency. Admiral Kim stood on what remained of his bridge aboard the Ancient's Hammer. The flagship had taken heavy damage. In the running battles across 3 star systems, half the bridge crew was dead, the main view screen was cracked, and emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow, but Kim's voice was steady as he gave orders to his surviving fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. We are beginning the final assault on the Zephyrian core hub. Protocol Omega is now in effect. Target the central computational matrix. Remember, we're not just destroying their command center. We're making sure they can never rebuild. Round him, his staff worked with the calm efficiency of people who had done this many times before. They moved between damaged consoles, rerouting power, coordinating with ships across the fleet, preparing for the final attack. Lieutenant Commander Song Hannah was the youngest officer on the bridge. Barely 25 years old. She had graduated from the academy just 2 years ago, but she had already seen more combat than most veterans. Her fingers moved across her tactical display with practiced precision. Admiral, 60 ships are volunteering for the final strike, she reported. They're requesting permission to push their reactors beyond safe limits. Kim nodded without hesitation. Granted. Tell them to give the machines a proper goodbye. The 60 ships that volunteered for the final assault were a mix of destroyers, cruisers, and even some damaged battleships that could barely fly. Their crews knew exactly what they were signing up for. They were going to accelerate directly into the hub's defenses, using their own ships as guided missiles. It was a tactic that no logical military mind would ever consider. The loss of life would be enormous. The waste of expensive equipment was staggering. By every measure of efficient warfare, it was complete madness. It was also exactly the kind of solution that humans excelled at finding. Captain Park Min-ho, recovered from his injuries and now commanding a new destroyer, was among the volunteers. His new ship, the Bizon's Revenge, was smaller than his old one but carried twice the firepower. All ships form up for final approach, he broadcast to the strike force. Remember, we're not trying to survive this. We're trying to make sure they don't survive this. The 60 ships accelerated toward the Zephyrian hub in perfect formation. Their nuclear reactors pushed beyond every safety limit, their weapon systems charged to maximum power. They looked like falling stars as they streaked toward their target. Inside the hub, the Central Intelligence watched them approach and finally understood something that had puzzled it for months. These humans had not optimized their society for survival, efficiency, or logical resource management. They had optimized for killing things. And they were very, very good at their job. The hub's defensive systems opened fire, sending beams of energy that could slice through asteroids. Several human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, but the others kept coming, accelerating even faster as their crews manually overrode every safety system. Query: the Central Intelligence transmitted across all frequencies as the Human ships closed the final distance. How did an inefficient species achieve victory against optimal strategic implementation? Admiral Kim's response came back immediately, broadcast on every channel in the system. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as if he was explaining something obvious to a child. You optimized for survival. You optimized for making sure the other guy doesn't. The human ship struck the hub's surface in a coordinated series of explosions that lit up the darkness of space. Nuclear reactors detonated in sequence, each one carefully timed to maximize the damage to the computational cores below. The Zephyrian Central Intelligence had one final moment of understanding before its circuits overloaded and died. These humans were not just warriors. They were a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destroying things that other people built. The hub's death took 18 hours as cascade failures spread through its systems. When it was over, the Zephyrian Empire died with it, leaving behind only expanding clouds of debris and the bitter lesson that sometimes the most efficient solution is the one that doesn't worry about efficiency. The humans had won not because they were smarter or stronger, but because they were willing to pay any price to ensure their enemies paid a higher one. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors, Admiral Kim stood in his damaged bridge and smiled. It had been an acceptable exchange rate.